And we're rolling, Bill.
We are.
Are you presenting?
I am.
Awesome.
Why
Okay.
don't you introduce us today?
No, you can introduce. I wasn't ready.
Okay. You weren't ready? Okay.
Hi,
Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us. Welcome to Two Floridian, where we speak with people in a lounge-type environment about things that are impacting Florida. And today we have someone very special with us, Holly. Now I'm
Keris.
remembering Keris. Thank you, Holly Keris. I have mispronounced her last name before, and I'm trying to get it right.
Holly Keris.
Holly Keris. She's the senior curator of the Cummer Museum, which you can find here in Riverside, right on the river with beautiful gardens. So we thought to talk with her a little bit today about what brings her to Jacksonville and a little bit about what's going on with the museum as well. So thank you for joining us, Holly.
Thanks
Really
for
appreciate
having
it.
me.
Yeah, thanks for plugging us in your busy schedule.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, we understand you just got back from Boston, and you were there for a conference.
It was, yes, the American Public Gardens Association conference was in
Public gardens.
Public gardens. We're a public garden too.
That's true.
With
And
a
you're
museum,
gorgeous garden.
and we have gorgeous gardens.
Wow.
So
Tell
it
us
was
a little bit about that.
Yeah, I didn't even know that there is such a thing.
There
Garden
is such a
Association.
thing. There was actually more than 1,000 people from the U.S. and Canada attending this conference in downtown Boston a couple weeks ago. Week-long conference.
A whole week.
A whole week.
Was it like Parks and Rec?
No, it was
You
not.
stole my question.
No, dang it. Sorry.
It was not. We were mostly talking about sustainability issues, but also community issues. There was a really great session about how we understand that being in nature and also being in a museum and surrounded by beautiful
Right.
things really has legitimate health impacts. It's not, this is not, funky science or anything like this. It actually can be demonstrated today with MRIs and blood pressure and
Oh.
cortisol levels and all sorts of things. And so, not only is it about the work that we're doing to maintain these spaces, but how can we talk about what we're doing and really encourage people, not just to, it's great if you want to come for a stroll or sit outside for a little bit, but like actually encourage people, like this is really something that's good for you physically
Right.
and mentally.
Yeah, this is fascinating. I mean, it makes total sense, but
It makes total sense, but
yeah.
you don't think about it.
Because you go to a museum to see art, right, or a certain artistic expression, or you don't go to a museum for mental health.
Right. But there are
which makes total sense.
There are actually places now, both for museums and for public gardens, where physicians write prescriptions. You get a prescription just like you would take to a pharmacy that says, go do these experiences. Because if you are inside a museum and you get lost in, close looking and quiet contemplation, it's a very meditative experience.
Yes.
You can find joy, you can tap into different emotions. It gives you the opportunity to maybe talk about what you're feeling in a different way because you're looking at this object. And if you're going outside in the gardens, especially our gardens with, not only the beautiful plants and the flowers and the architecture, but being on the river, you get to see a dolphin, you get to watch the sunset, any of those sorts of really magical experiences.
Absolutely.
They really do bring your cortisol levels down.
So did they do like case studies or whole like research?
Yeah, there were one of the best case studies was actually there was a program that was in Philadelphia that is a combination of public gardens, a community advisory kind of group, and the Children's Hospital, where they were like legitimately giving people prescriptions to go to these public gardens where they would have kind of facilitated experiences. Not everybody has the same comfort level, either being in a public garden space or being in a museum space, to be like, sure, I'll just randomly show up on a Tuesday afternoon, and I don't need anyone to tell me what to do. I'll just walk around. A lot of people, that is actually an anxiety producing episode. So by making these prescriptions where people can go for a class or a workshop or some kind of facilitated experience where they get to build that comfort level. So ultimately, on the random afternoon, they just say, God, yeah, I really just want to go. They have the skill set to go and do it on their own. So it's pretty incredible.
Yeah, I love that. I never thought about it. It's just so it's so
Yeah.
simple and so perfect.
And retrospectively, I can think that a good percentage, a good amount of my health, both mental and physical, has come from museums.
Mm.
I mean, if you
And
think about
gardens.
how often when we go just about anywhere, what is the
What
first
is
thing we do? We
what
go
is
to
the
museum.
and what is the first thing most people do when they go on vacation? You look for the activity. Like, what's the museum?
Mm-hmm.
Is there a concert? Is there, you know, a great public park? And yet I think it's oftentimes we forget to be the tourist in our own town.
Right.
We leave those experiences for the vacation. You know, this I'm in a new place that I want to
Right.
explore. It's like, well, there's a place here. Like, this is
Exactly.
accessible to us all the time. And, you know, but whether or not it becomes part of someone's actually regular lived experience, it doesn't always happen.
For me, what exposed me to the events that you had at the Cummer and what made me encouraged to go regularly were your outdoor events
Yeah.
in the gardens. And when I realized this very liberal use of the garden from my view, because I think of it when growing up as a youth, I thought of museums very stodgy. And I imagine
quiet. You can't talk.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
bunch of
You know,
rules.
right?
Can't do this. Can't do that. Yeah.
And you know, but you don't know what these paintings mean. You don't. I mean, what's wrong with you? There's. I think people feel a lot of pressure.
Intimidate. Yeah.
It's yes to feel like you have to be an expert.
Right. Yeah.
When you walk in, and you have to know kind of all of those assumed behaviors,
Right.
and it's, you know, it's not true. At least it's not true.
When I heard a punk show for the first time in Cummer, and I thought, oh my goodness, this museum is doing everything.
Tropical Storm, was it, or something?
And it was amazing.
Yes.
It was really, really good. And I thought,
you know, that was indoors.
Yeah.
The one I think you're referring to were like the picnics or concert and picnics, something like that. Yeah.
I'm kind of conflating the purpose for different time.
But I mean, there's so many great opportunities, or your weekly late hour free, you know, admission days are just absolutely amazing. Even if you have just 30 minutes.
Right.
To come in, walk through the garden, and enjoy the river.
For some reason,
see the first, the exhibition, and go ahead.
I don't know why it matters, but in the free days, I feel like I can go for 20, 30 minutes. It's the same either way. But when I pay, I feel like I want to stay longer.
Never go, to be honest, we never go for 30 minutes. It's just...
No, but we have gone for an hour.
Even to walk through the garden will take more if you're like,
right.
Look at this plant, and look at
right,
this plant.
Because you get... You know, you get kind of caught up in that moment, and you know, you're not thinking about your grocery list. You're not thinking about your to-do list at work. You're not thinking about the errands that you have to do at your house. You're not thinking about, you know, childcare, elder care, anything like that, because you're just looking at the beautiful flower. Right. You're looking at the butterfly. You're looking for the dolphin. You're like, oh my God, I'd never noticed that detail in that painting before. Right. Like you can escape.
And the river is such a component to your museum as well.
Well, not only aesthetically, but I'm also thinking energetically, you know, the moving water.
Yes.
Yeah, it has a very calming effect. Unconsciously, we react to that. And I had a conversation many years ago with someone who works a lot with the river, and they do like the river swim and all these things. And he was, I don't know if he was serious or... I think he was serious. He said, like, important negotiations, he takes them on the water. Because it's like it balances egos, and people actually talk about what matters versus, like, pulling the blanket.
Right.
Yeah, because it's, like, again, the water effect. And, we're so lucky to have Cummer Museum on the river with this absolutely gorgeous, also educational garden, because it represents 2 or 3 different styles.
Right, yes.
And,
And ironically... in a town that is completely surrounded by water, you know, with our fantastic twisty, turny river and the beaches and all the tributaries, there's just not a lot of places that you can go. If you, I mean, not everybody has the opportunity to live on the river. Not everybody has a boat. So where can you actually go?
Yes.
Right?
This is one of like our constant discussions with Bill, especially when you travel. Like, it is so simple, and it's almost like, as they say, no-brainer idea.
Right.
that this would be so popular. A little cafe, a restaurant, or just like a
Right.
little strip. Like I know what you mean, and I like that. Again, Cummer provides that because you have that little restaurant, bar, cafe, and you
Yes.
can take
You
your
can
drink to the
take your drink
garden. I
outside. You
love sitting
can,
under that
you
huge
know,
oak.
order your food to go, and take your little box lunch and
Yes.
go sit outside. I mean, we're in such a great neighborhood here in
Mm-hmm.
Riverside, Avondale, because we do have the Cummer, we've got Memorial Park, we've got Ram, we've
Mm-hmm.
got the Riverwalk. There are folks who are doing such tremendous work on all those riverfront parks now,
Mm-hmm.
areas downtown that hopefully will come online in the next couple years. The Emerald Trail. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
this whole neighborhood is really a microcosm for getting access to the river, getting outside, being walkable, being bikeable. So many good benefits that are all happening right here, where you don't have to get in a car. Maybe you have to get in a car to come here, but once you're here,
Right.
you
Yeah,
you
just
you can just
walk and
explore, which is wonderful.
Yeah,
absolutely, yeah.
that's why I moved here first, and then Alexandra came, and why we stayed afterwards is we ride around on our bikes, and we like to go up to Cummer on a bicycle, and
Yeah.
you can have
Yeah.
beautiful views along the river,
Mm-hmm.
and we just think it's a whole gestalt, a neighborhood that has a lifestyle
Yes.
built into it, and certain ideals, not not ideals that favor even one side or another, ideals that favor just inclusion and going outside and being
Community.
and community.
Yes.
Yeah, that's
Mm-hmm.
right.
Can I ask a question and about the public parks? It's just because it was sorry, not public park, public gardens.
Yes.
So there's distinction garden park, and there's distinction public and non-public garden, and that association was
Private,
only for public and only gardens.
Well, I mean, you can take public in a couple different directions. Um, there are parks like locally, like Memorial
Mm-hmm.
Park, or something like Boston's Public Gardens, or um, where there's no hours, there's no admittance fee. You just walk in
Mm-hmm.
whenever you want to, and you walk out. There's public gardens like ours, where some days are free, some days you pay admission, but in some capacity, the public has access to them,
Mm-hmm.
as opposed to a private garden, which, like, unless you're going because someone has invited you to a party or something that's
Right.
residential, there's no access. So the Public Gardens Association is kind of the garden that, whether it's free, whether it's 24 hours, whether it's admission for certain hours, if there are publicly accessible hours and activities, that counts to
Defined.
as a
Okay.
public
And
garden.
I guess garden is that it has to be cultivated in a way
There are
versus park.
There's not that much of a difference between the two. I mean, even some park areas that look very naturalistic,
Right.
have had some interventions, right?
Boone
So
Park, for example.
Boone Park is great. It started off with the idea of being an arboretum here in town. I mean, it wasn't just like the way that it looked when all the houses sprang up around it. Like, there was some kind of thought process that went into it, and the introduction of different trees and things like that. I mean, so a botanical garden, people who are actually propagating seeds and preserving seeds, and
Would that be Tree Hill?
trialing.
Would that be like Tree
Tree
Hill?
Hill would be something like that. There's like the Arnold Arboretum in Boston that is actually introducing and trying to, propagate species to be adaptable to changing climates. So they're trying to
I love that.
introduce, new tree species into, New England, and then sharing that out with other places in the world. So they're going to China and Japan and getting, seeds and cuttings and all that kind of stuff, and bringing them back. Then there's something like ours, which is really, certainly we use it as an educational classroom, and we use it as a wonderful place, to go have a concert, to go walk around, any of those sorts of things. But we're kind of more of a like a pleasure garden. Like, we're not we're not saving seeds for
right,
the
right,
apocalypse,
yeah.
right?
It's just
Like
about
we're
pure
not.
hedonism.
It's beautiful. You know, we're lucky that, I mean, they are historic spaces and that they're, you know, more than 100 years old at this point, are coming up on it, but they're not frozen in time. You know,
Right, yeah.
we're moving forward
We have
with.
an English style garden. Yeah, there's 3, right?
There's English style, there's Italian style, and then there is a garden that was designed by the Olmsted Brothers firm. They're the folks who did Central Park and Brooklyn's Prospect Park, and well, they're the sons of the man who did that. So also the same firm that was responsible for the design of Memorial Park, which is just a couple blocks down the street from us. But of course, all of that was residential. That was, you know, the Cummer family's backyard.
Nice backyard.
A very, very nice backyard.
So you had a question. We talked about the gardens, the English, the Italian,
I did,
and
but now I have a whole other question.
Okay.
So, Holly, I was curious, what brought you to Jacksonville? Are you from Jacksonville? Or
I
did
am
you
not. No,
Okay.
the Cummer brought me to Jacksonville.
Okay, because of the Cummer.
Yes.
So tell us a little bit about that, about your transition.
About your beginning.
Yeah. Take us back to the start.
Once upon a time. No, so directly before the Cummer, I had been working at the Museum of Arts and Sciences in Daytona Beach as their curator of collections, and had been there for about 3 years. It was my second or third job after graduate school. I went to the University of Virginia and came back to Central Florida. I had grown up in the Central Florida area.
Oh, okay. So you are Floridian in a way.
Like I've lived here since I was 2, so it's always my caveat. Like I'm not actually from here,
Right.
and I still will say, you know, my family are Yankees, Yankee transplants to Florida, but I wanted, you know, I hadn't actually contemplated getting a job when I was in grad school. Like I was so interested in finishing, and then I woke up about a month before graduation and I was like, oh, I need a job. And so I was able to call a couple people in Central Florida that I had worked with previously, and so I got 2 part-time jobs, one at the City of Orlando's public art program, which was opening the Manello Museum of American Art at that time, and then also at the Morse Museum in Winter Park. And so I had these kind of 2 part-time opportunities and did that for a couple months before the job in Daytona Beach came open. And we had actually lent some things to the Cummer for an exhibition. So I got to know the staff at the museum. I'd come up a couple times to, you know, have meetings and see our stuff on loan and everything. And you know, they called me one day out of the blue and said, we're adding to the department. You know, can you get us your application and materials? And so that was that in my mind. You know, when you're a youngster, it's like, oh, it's a good 3 to 5 year opportunity, you know, get different experience, work in a, you know, a more fully art museum. Daytona is a little bit art, a little bit science, a little bit history. Right. And I was like, oh, 3 to 5 years. And it was 21 in January.
21 years with Cummers. This is amazing.
It's pretty crazy.
21 years. Did you celebrate your 20th anniversary with Cummers?
I did.
Last year?
Yeah, last year.
That's a big achievement.
It is.
Yeah, honestly, turning a fine arts degree into a career is an achievement on its own. That's a rock star achievement right there.
Yeah.
And then 20 years of such a prestigious museum is really
fortunate to be in a place where I've had incredible growth opportunities. I mean, most people you have to make a job transition and move to a new city to actually get, you know,
promoted
to get to the next level, promoted, to have new experiences, you know, to have new responsibilities. And I've just been really fortunate that I've had
you've seen multiple a lot of experiences. Changes. You've actually been through some very interesting times then at Cummer.
It's you know, yes, not least of which was Hurricane Irma.
That's right. It devastated
a couple
the
years
garden.
ago, which wiped out the gardens for about 2 years. and just kind of the philosophical opening up of the museum from, from aesthetically taking down the hedges along, the front sidewalk and making the front of the campus, more open, more accessible, with the cafe, with the sculpture garden, with the wider sidewalk for pedestrians and bicyclists and everything.
I would say it's substantially more modern. It certainly has become much more modern in the last 20 years.
And it's been a lot of fun from the art perspective, because Nina Cummer, our founder, was very, very generous in her mandate about founding the museum. So she didn't put into place any tough restrictions like some other museum founders did. If you think about Albert Barnes at the Barnes Collection in Philadelphia, you think about Isabella Stewart Gardner in Boston, who were founding their own museums at the same time, who were saying, you can't buy anything, you can't sell anything, you can't move anything. Here are the hours people can come in. Here's how you talk to people about this. And Mrs. Cummer was like, here's my stuff. here's my house. Here's my stuff.
Go for it.
Go make it work. Like, this is, I want a museum that's a center of beauty and culture for all the people of Jacksonville.
That's the right way to leave a legacy.
I am, she appointed her first board of directors for the museum and literally said, I'm leaving a very modest gift that other people are going to have to support if this institution is going to continue on into the future. And so figure it out. So there aren't those kind of, we don't have a mandate that says we only must show art, from a certain time period or a certain country.
Just maintain the work and pay the bills.
And be open to the public. And so we have great flexibility, and it's tremendous fun to have everything from ancient Egyptian work to, more modern and contemporary works. We just opened an Aboriginal exhibition a couple of weeks ago.
We really liked the one of the women's fashion of outdoor clothing.
Sports fashion. Sporting fashion.
That was really cool.
That was really fun. And we just are opening to 300 years of American quilts. So, talk about like that whiplash effect. So within a year, you can go from, ancient Asian art to 19th century American art to sporting fashion to quilts. We have a contemporary art exhibition coming up in the fall. We've got the Aboriginal one. We had, tattoos and Japanese prints.
Dishes.
And the dish, there's all kinds of things.
I thought the dishes would be boring, and then I found quite a bit fascinating. We even bought these from the Cummer. Those are in your gift shop.
I think, proud bragging, but like best gift shop in town.
Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah, it's very diverse, really nice. Also.
And that is, you helped support programming at the museum by buying these. So any profit that comes out of the shop goes back into, our ability to be open, to host these exhibitions, to host the programs and the concerts and the lectures and things like that we do.
Right. And they were really nicely made and reasonably priced too. It wasn't, they're really good glasses that you're not going to find.
And you're not going to find somewhere else.
Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome glasses, Bill.
Nice plug.
Can I ask, because of the diversity and as you said, like there's no restriction imposed, how do you choose? What influences your decision for the next exhibition?
Yeah. So we plan our exhibition schedule about 2 to 3 years in advance. That's kind of the lead time that I'm working with. And maybe about 10 years ago, we introduced to our board an exhibition philosophy statement that staff crafted. It's fairly broad because, of course, Mrs. Cummer's mandate is very broad. But we talked about why exhibitions are important to the museum. Clearly, we do, maybe 9 or 12 of them a year. Some years, that's a lot of effort. It's a lot of energy. Why? Why do we why do we expend that much energy in something? Why do we think this is important? And what do we hope the exhibition program actually does for us? So we talk about, you know, our exhibition program either augmenting, you know, conversation and dialogue that's in our permanent collection, or providing context and dialogue that we can't do in our permanent collection, linking to contemporary events, you know, linking history to contemporary events, being a place where people can come and learn and explore their curiosity and make those kind of connections. And so I fortunately have a very broad exhibition mandate. So I I I subscribe to a lot of newsletters from other museums. I subscribe to a lot of listservs and arts journals, and like trying to keep, you know, a pace with what other people are doing, what projects are coming online. The more you work with somebody, if they're developing projects, sometimes you get a call saying, you know, hey, we're working on this. It's, going to be 3 years away. Is the Cummer interested in doing that? We're going to have an Andrew Wyeth exhibition in about a year. And that's how that one came about. People that we had worked with before putting something together and said, you know, hey, we thought of the Cummer, which is great. But a lot of times it's cold calls, you know, hey, I see this thing is opening at your facility. Do you have plans to travel it? You know, sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. And then there are also things that, you know, we put together ourselves, kind of starting in the permanent collection, or not. And so you can kind of go a couple different ways, but the kind of the biggest thing is actually, for me, it's logistics and budget. And you know, there are some great shows that are out there that, you know, when it's available, we're not available. And can we massage? Can we make that work? Sometimes you just can't. And so it really, even though so much of my job is like that creative expression and bringing these different topics and mediums to Jacksonville, the other 50% of it is, where can we put it? How can we make this work? Does it work with the other things that are going on around it? You know, can we get it to open at the right time? How does it fit in with the budget? Do we have enough space for it? Do we have enough storage for the crates? Like, there's a lot of logistics that actually project management.
I know that whenever we hang just a painting, it's always, you know, we got to consider the lighting, the how it ties in with everything else. And this is just a painting in our home. In a museum, I'm positive this has got to be times 100 on every single piece.
So even to borrow something from another museum, we have, you know, the industry has what's called a general facility report, and it's a 50 or 60-page document that is everything about your operations. How far away are you from a fire department? What kind of sprinkler system do you have? What kind of HVAC system have? How well can you maintain your temperature and humidity levels? You know, how many elevators do you have? What size are they? Are there galleries on the second floor? You know, who has access to those areas? Like, you know, what's your floor made out of? I mean, all kinds of things that we actually have to send to people who review it and say, okay, yeah, we think you're operating at, you know, the right level, the right standard for us, and so we'll agree to lend. So it's and if, you know, if someone asks to borrow one of our things, we do the same. Right. We do the same thing. You know, we've had instances before where, you know, there was a wrong dimension on an artwork, and, you know, the crate didn't fit through someone's loading dock door. So, you know, stuff happens. So even though you're doing that level of due diligence, but there is a lot of that kind of back and forth. It's not just as easy as, you know, that looks cool, sign me up.
You hear about the errors all the time too. The press loves to point out anytime. It's like if mom messed up, you know, you can't. The kids gotta laugh about it. You know, the press is always there immediately to point out anytime that something goes wrong at a museum.
But, you know, to your point, we have a full-time exhibition designer on staff, which some museums do. Certainly larger ones, not necessarily, you know, mid-sized museums like ours do. But we're really fortunate because we have somebody who, you know, is really thinking about those aesthetics. I'm thinking about, you know, how things are thematically grouped, what objects really speak to each other and need to be in close proximity. And he's really thinking about what's the right color for the walls, and how do we design the space so people really feel like they're being led through and called into the next room with those sight lines and that sense of movement and cohesion. And I think it makes a really big difference.
Absolutely, yeah. I was actually just about to say that every, especially the temporary exhibitions, they do feel this way, 100%. This is where I also wanted to ask: do you have the walls? Are they like fixed walls, or can you move certain walls?
So in kind of the big gallery where sporting fashion just was, the perimeter walls are all fixed, but there are movable walls on the inside. They can't move out of the space.
Right.
That's the trick. They don't, you know,
they can adjust.
They can shift position, but they, you know, if they're going to leave, they have to get destroyed.
Need them to leave,
but honestly, like I think we've had all of those. That gallery came online in 2005, and we've had all of those walls since that time. They were very smartly designed where we've got kind of 2 niches in the front of the gallery, and we've got 3 niches in the back. And so they can, if we don't, you know, we did the exhibition a couple of years ago of the dried flowers, Rebecca Louise Law's installation. We didn't have any of those walls, but they were pushed back into those niches and kind of stacked on top of each other. So we're trying to be as, you know, it's not only an ecological concern, it's a cost concern as well. It doesn't make any sense to, you know, to have walls that can't be moved, that need to that you need to actually destroy, to reconfigure a space.
No, I find it's absolutely brilliant, you know, and I think it's especially for the space that will host and is designed to host temporary exhibitions, to have that flexibility.
You want the flexibility. Because sometimes you need one big empty room.
Exactly.
And sometimes you want to create smaller, more intimate spaces.
I'm always amazed when I go to the Cummer, even after having gone so many times. I feel like I walk into a small building from the outside, and it's so well designed, all of these, that I have the same, I'd say, breadth of experience that I have at massive museums, because there's so many things put into that space so ergonomically, and that flows so well. And I don't feel cramped at any point.
Yeah, that's what I want to say. It's very spacious, in the perception, and it is. And I think it's also the tall ceilings, a lot of that,
When you have the kind of the juxtaposition between the smaller galleries that are more human scale, right? That were part of the original museum building that opened in 1961.
In the corners,
the right side, if you look at
that way, compared to, you know, some of the spaces now that are, you know, more recent additions that have the volume. And so we hear a lot from people that they find it to be human scaled and like a comfortable space, which is so wonderful to hear, that, you know, once you get inside, that you don't feel that sense of like overwhelm and which way do I turn, and you know, I'm not sure where to go.
That's right. I don't feel there's like a space like to fly an airplane through, like I feel like in some museums, but I also feel that it is large. It's surprising to me how many voluminous rooms, that even when I go for conferences and things that you have there, I'm always like, how many rooms are in this place? There's more? And I thought it seemed like it already felt like Narnia. You know, when I go into this door and it's like a whole other world on the other side.
It doesn't look, the front facade doesn't really...
It hides the size.
It hides. It hides, and it certainly hides the gardens behind.
How many square foot is the building?
Oh God, that's a great question. I think the building is about 90,000 square feet.
Wow. Okay, so it really hides that space. It does not.
No, because it's not tall.
Tall,
It's long, but it is actually. I mean, you can't appreciate how deep it is from the front. So it is very, you know. surprising when you get inside.
And I think those old oaks in the front, they kind of also kind of mask yeah. So you don't have that long flat facade to perceive as like one unit. Yeah, there's a lot of like.
It's not stark, so there's a lot of that like modulation, and you can't really get far enough away from it to. It's impossible to photograph the front of the building, right? Because you have to like which front. Do you want to pick the right front? Do you want to pick the left front? Right. You know, a drone.
I have a question, and it's okay if you don't want to answer. But so you said you kind of try to keep up with what's going on nationally and I guess international as well with other museums. And I know you have regular art lunches with the curator, senior curator of MoCA, Ilva Rouse. But so do you kind of check in with each other? I know we have multiple museums and they all kind of have their field again.
Sorry, let me fix the camera. You can keep talking. I can fix it while you're talking.
Okay. You're not going to stop?
I'm going to fix it while you're talking.
Okay. But technology, I know, it's the internet. That's why sometimes I think we just record and I mean, we're going to clean it up for the post.
Right.
But anyway, do you check in with others? Is there like that sense of collaborating with other museums, especially because Cummer has such a wide spectrum of what you can show, right? In terms of like period or specification, and sometimes it's not necessarily just fine art, right? Like very often it's right.
Yeah. We at Ilva, at MoCA, the Ritz, Mosh, we do try to get together, you know, once a quarter or so. COVID kind of threw off that rhythm and made it a little bit harder. But you know, it's great to have a network of colleagues who are right here in town. I mean, it's going to conferences is great, and meeting people from all over is great. But it's great when you have people who are like right here.
Yeah.
And I also make an effort whenever possible to take, you know, my department and some other colleagues on road trips in the state of Florida. You know, like let's go to Orlando for a day. You know, Sarasota is a little far, but we've done it. We've done it before. You know, you can easily get to Gainesville in a day, and just meet. It's so important to actually meet people and have conversations. And I think in some respects, COVID knocked people out of that habit. I mean, it's easy to put something together on your own and not talk to anybody about it, but it's so much richer and more dynamic when you have those relationships and you can call and say like, yeah, what are you doing? I heard you did this. How did it work for you? Tell me about it. Like, what kind of feedback did you get? You know, I've learned more things like escorting Cummer works around the country, going to other museums and saying like, oh my God, where did you get those dollies? Like, you know, the dollies are fantastic. I've never seen those before. Tell me what your supplier was. Where did you get that cart? How did you build that thing that's perfect for this job? Like, what can I take some pictures of it, you know? And we're all crafty people, and so we're all coming up with these ideas and these shortcuts, and we're having these conversations. So the more that you can actually talk to your colleagues, it's incredible information that you can learn and bring back, and it's so worthwhile, the opportunity to just meet other people and talk about what they're doing and how it's going.
I love that. I think it also brings a more humane face to the whole like fine art or art establishment. That it's not just like all proper people on button-up shirts, you know, knowing everything about history of art, and it's like they're the same people. They have to deal with the same stuff. Figure out, is it going to fit in my house? Is it going to fit in this museum?
Right.
How can I make it better? Can I put something together myself?
Right. All the things, and that, you know, it's a very public-facing enterprise. I mean, we're here for the public, yes, we have a great art collection that we have to maintain and preserve, and we have fantastic gardens that we have to maintain and preserve. But if people don't come, it's a bunch of stuff. And so the irony of thinking that, you know, you can pull any of this off without, you know, talking to your community or talking to your colleagues, it's so counterintuitive. I mean, because it is all in service of the community, of the sector, you know, of the field, whatever.
Right. Yeah.
What do you do to maintain? How do you find? What do you do to maintain? I'd say contact with such a diverse community. I think we've got a really diverse community here in Jacksonville. I notice your program is very diverse. What do you personally do to maintain that diversity in a world where people naturally tend to fall into bubbles and smaller groups?
It certainly do. I mean, I think the first and most important thing is deciding to be intentional about it. And that can happen on lots of different levels. You know, that can be kind of more passive things like, you know, who are you following? You know, what are you reading? What things are you subscribing to? How well are you tuned in to the conversations that are happening? And there's the more active things about actually, you know, going out and seeing what's happening and participating in events. And that's both a personal level and a professional level, right? Because we're all humans. I mean, we have a professional life and we have a personal life, but they do all come together, right? Like, I live in this community. I don't just work in this community. And so making that commitment to be well informed and to know what those conversations are and to be a part of them and to, you know, to know who the players are so important. One of the things that we started doing a couple years ago at the Cummer, when we've done it a couple times now. We had a great exhibition last year of a Filipino American artist. We also recently had the tattoos in Japanese woodblock print exhibition. We've had an Islamic art exhibition. And so, you know, I'm not the subject matter expert on any of those things. I'm a generalist. I can appreciate them. I want to bring them to the community, but I am not, it's not my lived experience. I'm not the subject matter expert. So we pull together community advisory groups frequently that, you know, as I said, you know, these exhibitions are being booked 2 to 3 years in advance. So we can pull together a group of community leaders and say, we've got this fantastic opportunity either to create this experience or bring this experience to Jacksonville. How can we personalize it for our community? It's not just about taking it out of the box and throwing it up and saying, like, it's your responsibility to come. It's our responsibility for partnerships and to share it and create that dialogue. So those community advisory groups coming together who, you know, are thinking about those programmatic opportunities, who are, you know, thinking about marketing and communications and really thinking about how can we maximize, again, if we bring it and no one comes, it doesn't, there's no service there. So those community advisory groups have really been fantastic.
How big are those community
it's been everywhere between maybe 6 and 12 people.
That's decent. Yeah, that's
you know.
Good, yeah.
And it's really, it sounds like a lot of fun. I already imagine that you had
want to
this
be
amazing
on the
job.
advisory community group?
Oh, I like everything related to the Cummer. I like going. I like hanging out with people. And we also enjoyed interviewing Ylva.
She's not from Cummer.
I know, but I mean everything related to museums and art.
Okay.
I love the arts.
Right.
But I was thinking about how much fun it is to like look up things and then find out what's interesting to the community, and then to bring that's already fun. And now I find out there's a step in between where you talk with a lot of other people and leaders in the field, and that's even more fun.
It's so much fun. It's so much fun. We did a great kind of experiment a couple years ago for our 60th anniversary. We took one of our smaller galleries and we asked our visitors, like, what did they want to see in the next 60 years? And we let them put Post-it notes
Mm-hmm.
all over the walls, right?
Mm-hmm.
With what they were looking for. And, that's incredible feedback, and seeing the breadth of things that folks were interested in, which we were interested in, but to hear it from them that, yeah, we're super interested in global art. We're super interested in American art. We are interested in contemporary art, but we're also interested in historic art. And some people were far more specific than that, but those obviously are the broad categories. And we actually, God love one of our volunteers, but she took like all, however many hundreds of Post-it notes off the wall and transcribed them, and we broke them into categories and actually came up with percentages of what people were asking for, from topics to more concerts in the gardens to more hands-on classes, more actual art making classes. And so, capturing that data, we really listen to it. If you complete a survey for us, like, we really listen to it.
This is so
there's an incredible cross-departmental team at the museum who really designs all of our programs and events. So it's curatorial, education, events, marketing, visitor experience, retail. We all come together kind of once a month, and we're looking about a year out, and we're talking about what are the big topics, like how do we want to drill into those things, how can we create a season where there's something for adults and there's something for families, and there's something that's hands-on, there's something that's educational, there's something that's passive, there's something that's more active, there's something in the daytime, there's something in the evening, there's something on the weekends, and are we firing on all of those cylinders and getting that varied perspective internally and using the data that we're getting from our visitors to put it all together is a really dynamic process. I don't sit in a room by myself and say like, wow, these are the 15 things I'd like to see happen this month.
This is what I will show you today.
Right. Right. It's all about what I would like. But it is, I mean, the best word I can use to describe what I do is fun. It's just fun.
Yeah, that is great.
This is so...
And you bring the fun to us, because we have fun every time we go there because of that. We've really enjoyed the exhibitions at the Cummer. So give us an inside scoop. What's coming up, since you know years in advance?
You can give
us the new exhibition just opened, right?
Yeah, so we opened an Aboriginal exhibition maybe 4 weeks ago. We just opened 300 Years of American Quilts yesterday, which is absolutely fantastic. Whether or not you are a quilt textile person, this is coming on loan from the MFA Boston, from their permanent collection, and they've done such an incredible job personalizing these. So who made them, who cared for them, where did the indigo come from, where did the cotton come from, like what are these conversations that these objects actually represent, aside from being beautiful objects, but you can really dig deeper into that level.
I hear there's a lot of symbology as well.
There's so much stuff. There's history, there's economics, there's chemistry, there's all kinds of things, plus craftsmanship. In the fall, we have an exhibition of contemporary artists who are responding to the changing environment and the changing landscape, and kind of what our cultural connections and that symbiosis is between people and the environment. So I think that's going to be a really interesting
Is it a
dialogue.
National scale? Or?
It is, yes. It was organized by the National Museum at Duke University and is currently in Miami at the Prez Museum, and the Cummer will be the final stop on that tour. Then in the spring and summer, we're working with Crystal Bridges Museum of American Art on a project that is opening with them in the fall that's called Knowing the West, and it's taking a look at kind of our ingrained perceptions of the American West that started with 19th century landscape paintings by a bunch of white men who did not include the peoples who were already living there. So it's taking those paintings that, whether or not you know who the artist is, when you see them, we're all like, oh yeah, that's that's what I think of the West is, and it's kind of trickled down into TV and movies and all that, but it's pairing them with works by Native American and Latin American and other indigenous artists and communities.
And that's next fall.
It's spring, summer, and then in the fall we have the Andrew Wyeth exhibition and also a solo exhibition by Kalita Garcia Rawls. And then I can keep going, but that's probably
like
enough.
So already enticing. Yes.
Yeah, that is really brilliant. I'm looking forward to several of those. Yeah, I'm going to take my mom to the quilt exhibition for sure.
Definitely. It's worth. It was great to see people through there yesterday who were, looking and reading and lingering and already saying that they want to come back. So.
Yeah, because I imagine it's so much like in any museum, regardless of the size, it is, if you connect, it is almost sometimes overwhelming, and you kind of have to either, at least I didn't major in fine arts, but history of arts was part of my 5-year program that basically is cultural studies, so
yes.
The history of art was a significant part of it. And when I was younger, I would go to a museum, especially if you travel, you go, let's say, to Louvre, you go to Prada Museum, and you're like, everything,
right.
And now I was like, this is impossible. You're so exhausted after.
You can't. Their museum fatigue is real.
Yeah.
You really do reach a point where, like, mentally and physically,
absolutely,
you can't absorb.
And then he was like, okay, I've seen all that, but how much did I retain? How much did I connect? How much am I taking? So about maybe 15 years ago, I switched to, I'm going to go, if it's my first time, I may even go through the permanent collection, and like as soon as I meet one piece that moved me, that made my visit,
yes.
I can leave now.
Yes.
I can always come back, or just scout, the map, and it's like, okay, I want to see this period, and I just go to a specific, hall or specific
yes.
Part of the museum, because it is true. Yeah, it's,
you can't, you reach a point, a saturation point where you can't absorb. And especially if you're looking at things for the first time.
Yes.
It's different when something like our permanent collection or our gardens, where they're there most of the time. We do change things up, but your old favorites are probably on display and you can go visit whenever you want. But when you're seeing a new exhibition for the first time and you're confronted with 60 objects that you've never seen before,
right?
Like, you do hit a point where, it's great if you do the kind of the superficial pass through and you're like, yep, I've seen it, I've done it. But it's wonderful when you can say, I've done that, but I'm going back because I want, I want to commune with those 5 things, right? Like, what were the ones that I really want to stand in front of and spend some time with? Because I'm a firm believer, it doesn't matter what your education about the arts were, it doesn't matter what your background with the arts were. If you open yourself up to it and you look, like, it will speak to you. And it may say, like, God, I don't like this. This is really jarring. I don't understand it. I don't like it. And that's fine. But it's that process of, like, that close looking and saying, like, what do I see in this? What is it trying to tell me? What does it make me feel? And I think it's just such a rewarding experience if you can kind of come into it with that.
Some things resonated
Absolutely.
Later with me. I
Yes.
remember in my youth, for example, at the Cummer, I remember thinking, I'm not interested in dishes. This is nothing.
You in dishes.
Well, because it stood out to me as something that, as
why are there so many of them?
Yeah,
right?
exactly. I felt like I was missing something.
I can go to Target and buy these. Why is this special?
And then I got older and I bought dishes, and I have dishes of my own. And then I found I like some dishes better than others. And then I learned about the history of different cultures and how this has changed. And now I go to the Cummer and I look at dishes and I'm suddenly very interested.
Well, and, we were talking about technology a little bit ago. I mean, those dishes were the first porcelain that was made in Europe. I mean, porcelain had been made in Asia for centuries and
the original corporate secrets.
Totally. I mean, this is all about, like, technological innovation. It's about trade secrets and espionage.
Yeah.
It is, like, it's scientific, it's artful. I mean, it was like the cell phone of its day. And yes, it's really easy to kind of reduce that today to say like my grandmother has these, right? Like I have them in my house. But when you can stand back for a second and say like,
how they got there.
Wow, like yes, and the guy who knew how to make the paste and form the shapes didn't know how to fire it, and the guy who knew how to fire it didn't know how to paint it, and nobody knew how to do the gold leaf. You had to put it on a boat and you had to send it somewhere else to do that.
Would kill people
who
tried to go between the cities and figure it out.
Totally serious espionage, right? And you don't think because you have them, right? Like they're so familiar, they're so easily accessible, but you put yourself in that perspective where it was like, wow, there were so many hands who had to play a role, and there was so much experimentation that had to happen to produce these things, and it's 300 years later, and they're still here.
You feel the difference when you drink from a nice porcelain cup versus a cup that has a broader rounded edge and it's more basically made,
and an uncomfortable handle, or the handle that gets hot when you're drinking your coffee.
Or it's unbalanced.
It's unbalanced.
It's like you're like tipping over.
Right. Like all the things where you're just you don't think about the manufacturing, you don't think about the production, you don't think about the design until you're confronted with the thing that you don't like. Right?
That's right. This is what really grew on me, and kind of, reminded me that there's sometimes things, if something doesn't speak to you in the moment, then take a look and just move on, because it might stand out later. It might be something that's interesting in another context at another time. But museums have so many things that I think it's really nice, as Alexandra said, if you have one impression, for me, it's a success.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. It's like, it's your take away for this experience. And, I had something else. Oh, didn't you say that you like Cummer's dishes collection is the largest of that nature?
So it is. So our collection is all Meissen porcelain, and so Meissen was the first manufacturer in Europe to figure out how to make porcelain, and it all dates from 1710 to 1760. So it's really exclusively that period where Meissen had cornered the market, right? Because they were so hypersensitive about those trade secrets moving to other firms. Eventually other firms opened up, but our collection is really when they were the folks in Europe who were making it. And at the time, the only other way to get porcelain was, of course, importing, and that made porcelain as expensive as gold. I mean, so this was an incredibly, incredibly valued commodity. So our collection is the largest and most significant collection of its type in the US because it's exclusively tableware. So plates and cups and saucers and teapots. It's not figurines. It's not other things. And it's also the third most significant collection of its type in the world. Wow. So it's
a big deal. Yeah. No, I learned something about plates at Cummer. I'm not kidding around. I mean, I'm like, I learned a thing or two about dishes there, and it's benefited my life ever since. I think that these are the things that I worry sometimes if it weren't for people like yourself reminding cultures of this, then all we have are advertised medium for entertainment, because there's so much of that, so much that's curated with an agenda. And your agenda is to expose the public to art, which is purely public benefit. It is entirely for our benefit.
I mean, and it's also, having a platform for people to engage in history in a different way, and people to engage with different cultures in a different way, and different time periods in a different way. It's really, it's a human experience to think that everything is happening new to us for the first time. And yes, there are certainly things that are happening today that weren't happening 100 years ago, but there was something like Meissen a couple hundred years ago that was as, groundbreaking for them as, our radio or our TV, right? Or our cell phone, right? There's all the way back to the invention of the wheel. I mean, there's all of these moments where it was a life-changing experience for the people who were living at that time. And that sense of discovery, wonder, awe, fear, love, trepidation, those are constant elements. It doesn't matter if that's 4th century BC or if it was, 1895 or if it's today. It's a constant. It may look a little bit differently, but if you can spend some time with it, what a great sense of like familiarity that you can have with kind of seeing how other people lived and how other people experienced things, that we're not so alone and isolated as we may think we are.
Yeah, through time. I love that. Ooh, I like this.
I think that's a good point to maybe draw. Do you have anything else you want to share before we draw to a close?
Everybody should go and see the new exhibitions and check out the dishes collection.
Check out the dishes.
Yes.
Check
and
out
of course
dishes.
The gardens.
Yeah.
That's did such a wonderful job in restoring them.
That's right.
From Irma.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me on. I appreciate it.
It was so much fun. I have more questions, but I have to say them.
I'll see you at the Cummer.
Yeah.
Well, we'll have you back.
Yes. I'd love that.
Well, thank you so much. We'll talk to you soon, and thanks for tuning in, everybody.
Yes. Sorry for the technical
difficulties.